Good morning and thank you for joining us. My name is Tina T-Bone. I will be your moderator for this morning's media availability. Go ahead, Premier.
Thank you, Tina, and good afternoon, everyone. We had a cabinet meeting this morning, and I'll be happy to take any questions from that. But before I do that, I have a few things I want to talk about. These past 5 months have been difficult, no question. Our province has experienced one tragedy after another, and we've seen a lot of death. Families have suffered immeasurable loss, and it is my hope that the generosity of others and the support from fellow Nova Scotians will continue to help heal broken hearts. COVID has taken its toll, and we are still not out of the woods, but we are in a much better position than we were when the virus first arrived. We are in better position to prepare for a second wave, and that's because of the hard work of Nova Scotians. Your support of public health protocols, and frankly of me and my government, has helped Nova Scotians flatten the curve. We will open up to the rest of the country at a time and some point, and I know this will be hard. But I believe in all of you, in the support, the efforts of this province and public health. I want to thank you for believing in me as your Premier. I know it hasn't always been easy. Our government has made some tough decisions in the past 7 years. When I arrived in office, we had a deficit of more than $500 million. We had to get our spending under control. So we called on Nova Scotians to rally around their province. Of course, we all remember the unions rallying around Province House. That wasn't an easy time. We asked our public sector unions to take less, not take nothing, just take less. And they may be asked again. When we got our spending under control, we found flexibility to build programs, to grow our economy, to create jobs, and to give our young people a future. The Ivany Report and the One Nova Scotia Coalition gave us a roadmap to restructure our economy and gave us all confidence to believe that a small province could do big things. We asked the private sector to step up, to build, to grow, to spend, to hire. And we knew as a government we needed to support that. So we created incentive programs to support businesses. The Graduate Opportunities Program helped more than 1,000 university and community college grads find their first job here at home. The Innovate to Opportunities rebate helped small business and medium-sized businesses modernize. By them spending their own money up front, they were rebated on the back end. An incentive to keep business here in Nova Scotia and to hire homegrown workforce. We also called on our universities to be part of our economic growth strategy. They became a major part of our immigration strategy, our startup community, and pushed enrollment to attract students from across Canada, many of whom built a life here after graduating. We also learned to be an export province. Many of our large companies were doing it, but we needed to provide support to our smaller businesses to help them gain the confidence and the expertise to sell in a global world. We managed to get control of our spending, balance our books, and reimagine our province. Our population grew to a record level. For the first time in my lifetime, the average age of Nova Scotians went down. That means more of our children are staying here, and more young people from around the world are seeing a future for themselves here. Unemployment also reached an all-time low. COVID has changed all of that, but it hasn't changed what we have learned as a province. We have proven that when we work together, we can do great things. We know we need to grow our population. We need to continue on our march to 1 million people. We need to continue to diversify our economy to continue to attract young people. And we need to continue to be confident in who we are and what we have to offer to build on our record success of exporting. This matters. It means that we can invest in you, the people of this province whose help those who need it the most. It's how we were able to introduce pre-primary, give every 4-year-old, no matter their economic class, a better start in life. This September, every 4-year-old will have that opportunity. We were also able to increase our child tax credit, giving thousands of more families a better chance to support their children. We increased the basic personal exemption so that low-income Nova Scotians could keep more of their own money. And we also invested more than $6 million in social enterprises to provide services to Nova Scotians with diverse abilities. This investment demonstrated they matter and that Nova Scotians care. We are also spending hundreds of millions of dollars to modernize our healthcare infrastructure for today and for future generations. Governing is not something that I've ever taken for granted. It is a privilege and an honor, and most importantly, an opportunity to change people's lives. I think about the organ donation legislation. Nova Scotians will no longer be bearing hope. Every Nova Scotian will be a presumed donor unless they opt out, giving more people a chance at life. We've invested $1 million in ovarian cancer for Canada, the first province in Canada to do so, to ensure that our mothers and daughters have a chance to beat this horrible disease. We are also at a critical time in our history. Black Lives Matter. Our government is working hard to right the many wrongs of the past. In this decade of people of African descent, we are trying to support African Nova Scotians who for decades lived on their own family homes but were not granted a deed. They didn't own their own home simply because they were black. This is wrong, and our government will work hard to fix it. I am proud that our government supported the restorative process to end the hurt and begin the healing of the former residents of the home for colored children. A restorative process that I believe we need to continue to support, and if we are going to change the relationship between black Nova Scotians and our institutions. If people do not see themselves reflected in our institutions, why would they feel to be part of the province? I am proud that our government appointed more black Nova Scotians to the bench than ever before. We appointed our first Mi'kmaq judge, and we've reached gender parity on our courts. We added diversity at our deputies table. All of our board appointments are done with a diverse lens, gender and culture. Is that enough? No, but it's a start to a conversation that I hope will one day lead to a more open and inclusive province, where African Nova Scotians feel safe and heard, where our Aboriginal community will feel part of the conversation and the solution. There's still a lot of work to do, and I believe in this province, and I believe in Nova Scotians. We may be small, but we are smart, strong, and above all, we care for one another. These past 7 years as your Premier have been the most rewarding of my professional career. Being your Premier has been a privilege and an honor, something I have never taken for granted. I am grateful to my team of elected colleagues. My caucus has shown so much courage. We've made some tough decisions, but we stuck together because we believed we were doing what was right for the future of this province. Yesterday, I celebrated my 17th anniversary in elected office. Andrea, Colleen, Jeffrey, and I started this journey actually in 1999. I lost my first campaign. I learned many lessons. They have sacrificed a lot for me to pursue a career in public office, and I want to thank them very much for everything that they have done. 17 years is a long time, and it's long enough. Today I'm announcing I will be stepping down and leaving public office. I have informed the party to plan for a leadership campaign, which I expect will take months. I will stay on and continue to govern, and I will be here to work with public health to keep Nova Scotians safe until the next leader is chosen. I love this job. I've enjoyed every day of it. And every day I'm inspired by the people of this province. But this is not a lifelong career. I've always believed that governing is not about power, it is about purpose. And I want to thank Nova Scotians for giving me the opportunity to be your Premier. I may not have always gotten it right, but here's what I know for sure. We are better together, and being kind matters. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have. It's time, 17 years. I've been in elected office, and as I alluded to, I had 4 years prior to that where I ran. It's a long time for my family, and I've been very fortunate. I had looked at doing it earlier this year. Of course, COVID hit. And then I recommitted to the job and my purpose here. And I'm feeling comfortable where we are, and the party will need time and to get someone ready for the next election. So this seemed to be the appropriate time to do it.
So what's next, Premier?
I don't know. I'm going to continue to govern until that. Listen, I've been doing this a long time. I've been doing this more than half of my children's life. I've been an elected official. This is something that we know, but I'm fortunate to be have diverse interests. But we'll see. There's nothing there other than I know it's time for me to change that direction.
Is this purely just a length of time thing? You'd like to do something else now? Like, are you tired of being premier? Is that?
I'm not tired of being premier. I'm tired. I'm not tired of being premier. I love this job. I get inspired every day. This is an immense privilege. Not only just to hold elected office. I began this journey with never wanting to be premier, was never wanting to lead a political party. I ran in the first case to wanting to change the community and help support the community I live in, one that I was raised in and one where our kids were raised, trying to help to make it better. Then opportunity came to help lead the party, and then some historic things happened. Where we defeated a one-term government to become governing, and I spent the last 6 years doing what I believed was in the best interest of all Nova Scotians. Not everyone agreed with that, and I appreciate that. But I'm leaving office knowing that I believe in my heart that I did what was in the best interest of all of us, not in the best interest of a few of us. It's been hard. It's been difficult. But it's been a real privilege to do it, but now it's time for someone else.
Any regrets?
I don't have any. You can always do things differently. You'll always, when you look back. But to the core of the team that I had with me, even in their difficult days, stood with me. I cannot tell you the amount of support that I have received from my colleagues through these difficult decisions, even when people were, rallying against us, people were worrying about whether they'd be reelected. It's not. It goes against political wisdom to get into a fight with the teachers union going into a provincial election campaign, which we did the last time because we believed what we were doing was right. And my colleagues stood with us, going to the campaign and knocked on doors through a campaign, and the voters rewarded us, sent us back, but they never cracked, and I'm so proud of them for everything that they've been doing.
Premier, I guess you were planning to go or announce this spring after the sitting, I'm assuming?
I was looking towards April, and of course COVID happened, and then I recommitted to the job, and I actually looked at and I reconsidered to whether I should run again, but it's just time. I've always believed this. Leadership matters. Leadership is important, but it needs to change. You can't continue to stay the same person who's for the health of the organization and the province. 2 terms is a long time, and do I believe there was a third one? Yes, I do. Do I believe we could have been reelected? Yes, I do. And I believe with a new leader, a new team, they can still be reelected. But it's just time for the province and for the government to have a new leader.
What can you tell us about an upcoming leadership election in terms of time frame?
I don't know any of that, no. The party will be the party.
Do you have any thoughts on who you see succeeding you?
No.
And does this mean that you're confident with the province's status with COVID? Why at this timing and not maybe in a few weeks as things sort of are more?
Well, obviously we're preparing for a second wave, and I'll be here. I will be here through that. It'll take a time for the party to pursue that. I want to tell you that I'm not leaving, and I want to reassure Nova Scotians that I'm not leaving. But the party needs a period of time to actually run a leadership race in order to have somebody ready for an election campaign. We're 3 years and a few months into this mandate. So they'll have to start that process. And if I'd waited any longer, it would have been unfair to the party, to any potential candidate, or potentially meant that I would have had to run into a campaign. And this just seemed to be the right time.
Premier, got a little choked up when you talked about your family. Can you talk a little bit about the kind of toll it takes and whether or not this decision is driven by some sort of family considerations?
Listen, Andrea and Colleen and Jeffrey have been extraordinary. Half of our married life, I've been elected official. I'm sure many times she feels like she was an only parent. I have two extraordinary young adults as children. I got elected when they were 11 and 13. My first election campaign, they were 7 and 9. Colleen showed me a picture of the four of us from 1999. I've changed a lot. They all look great. So Andrea raised them in many ways. You know, I'm sure like all of you, you think your parents are great. It's hard for my kids to have listened to the way politicians are talked about in this province, social media, the impact it has on them, the fact that we can say anything and anyone can accuse you of anything and say anything about you, and it takes its toll. But they've stood the test. Andrea's campaigned at home for me. I would not have been elected 17 years without her. There is absolutely no question in my mind that I could not have, first of all, could not have ever run with this without the extraordinary mother she has been, but I could not have been elected without her support. And if you go into my riding, where I believe I live in the best riding in the province, the birthplace of Canada, but they will tell you she is one of the reasons that I continue to have success. My stump speech at home is I've been in my riding the least in the last few elections, and my vote keeps going up. So the secret was to stay away. And then they all reminded me that's because Andrea was doing the campaigning and not me. So the deal was she wouldn't run against me, but maybe she'll put her name on the ballot next time.
You keep saying it's time. I just wondered if you could try to encapsulate what makes it time.
Well, it's 17 years. That is a long time. You know, I looked at this, and I follow politics, and I think 2 terms of a leader is a long time, personally for that person, but also for the direction of the province. I think it's time for, I think our government has done tremendous things. If COVID hadn't hit, we would have been in record spots in many of our things. Population, unemployment would have been the lowest. All of those things happen, but I think it's listen, I go back and imagine if everyone had only served 2 terms as the Premier of our province, potentially what the difference would that have made? Cabinet ministers become comfortable, governments become comfortable, a leadership race would be good to renew the party, and give a fresh conversation about the direction of our province. I'm very proud of my record. I'm proud of the things that we were able to do as a team. But now it's time for someone else to lead the province. Give it. No, give it some new energy.
Sorry, you had an opportunity at the start there to say a number of the things that you were very proud of as Premier. And looking, back at your legacy, there's been a lot of criticism of your government. I'm wondering, what were some of the low points for you? What would you have liked to have done differently? And I'm just wondering if you can address some of the transparency issues with media in particular. The use of personal emails, the lack of use of emails.
I don't share your view on the lack of transparency. I would say to you, you've bought into a conversation that the opposition may talk about. But that'll be up to you guys to write that story however you wish it to be. I'm very proud of the record that I have as government. We've had some challenging times. I go back, I talk about the pharmacare issue when we wanted to make those changes. Didn't fully understand the impact. I believe the principle of what we were trying to do was right, but I didn't understand we moved the problem from one group of seniors to another. That was obviously a challenging time. I'm sure I can look back and find places where we would have, people would have wanted us to do things differently. I wished we could have been able to get to a more reasonable approach where more members of unions felt that they had a role to play, and the union leadership felt they had a role to play to help fix the province. I think that people look at it as a government that we were fiscal hawks. It couldn't be further from the truth. We invested in the largest single social program in our lifetime in pre-primary. We've invested $6 million in social enterprise so intellectually challenged adults are working in a workplace that reflects that we care about them. We only were able to do that because we've been able to grow the economy and control the costs of government. And I wish I could have been able to do that without having as many protests as we had. I think for the first 5 years, I don't think I had a session where there wasn't some form of a protest. But that's governing. I was elected to make decisions, and I knew that not everyone was going to like them. But I did what I believed was in our collective best interest, and I think we're better off.
I want to back up a bit. You said that COVID hit. Did that cinch it for you, just the toll and the pace that you had to go through? Because you had been pretty definitive about wanting to run again.
No, well, I wasn't. You guys have been around politics long enough. If a leader says he's not running, and thinking about maybe he might or might not, or she might not run, everyone would have been looking, and speculation would have been ongoing. People needed to know that I was committed to the last day of my office, that I was going to make the decisions, tough as they may be and hard as they may be. And I needed support to make those. So I wasn't going to communicate to the province that I wasn't reoffering until I knew the time was absolutely when it was going to be and when it was right. COVID didn't change the impact of I'd made that decision prior to COVID, but COVID actually had me reevaluate because I didn't listen. I'm not going to leave with the province. I care about the people I love in the midst of a pandemic, with not knowing what was going to happen. So all of those plans were put on hold, and I gave this my all. I spent 5 weeks here without ever getting to my own property, my own home, away from my family, because I was working with public health and our team to try to get control of it. And we're at a position right now where I felt the window for me to, I either had to say I was going or I was too late, because if I waited till much later in the fall, second wave happens, we're dealing with that, and I just wouldn't have given the party enough time, and that wouldn't have been fair.
So when did you make that mental transition? I mean, can you give us a timeline? Because
I haven't really made any.
But I'll restate that you said you were pretty definitive about the fact that you wanted to stay on and you wanted to lead the party into the next election. And then when did that all of a sudden click in your head and go, well, wait a minute, maybe not? Well,
I couldn't say anything different. Let's be frank. Oh, it didn't really. I mean, I thought about it. You think about it after the last election. How much longer can you do this? How much longer do you ask people to put their lives on hold for you? So you think about that process. So it was, I was always thinking about it, but I've not moved out of my mindset hasn't moved from governing. It's just that you work your way through that, and I knew there's a timing issue because of leaderships take time, parties need to get themselves ready. So it would have been unfair if I'd waited any longer. But that's why the House was called in January. When was the last time you saw a budget introduced in January? And then March break. My hope was that people would have a great March break and then we'd come back, but obviously that didn't happen. COVID took place, and these last 5 months have been hard on our province, and not just me, but everybody. I mean, there's been a lot of sadness, and we're finding our way past it, finding our way through it, but it's taking its toll on the entire province, not just me.
I just want to challenge you on something. respectfully, I'm sure a lot of politicians will say they're being as transparent as possible, but that's actually the media's area of expertise, whether governments are being transparent. So when you say we've bought into fodder from the opposition, that's actually not true. That's us using our professional expertise to evaluate that. So I'm wondering what opportunities you see to improve transparency in your last few months in office.
I've been open and transparent with you and with Nova Scotians, and I will continue to be as long as I have the privilege to be the Premier of this great province.
We have a number of... Andrew, I'll come right...
We don't have a privacy commissioner, actually. We've never had. No, we don't have. No, we have a privacy officer. We never had a privacy commissioner. That's the irony. The irony of it is, because you call yourself something doesn't mean you are. And I appreciate your clarification.
I'm just wondering, you list off a lot of things that you're really proud about, a lot of things, the accomplishments your party's done. Is there anything, looking back now, you wish that maybe would have been handled differently, any big issue? Because as you mentioned, there have been a lot of protests. There have been some people who haven't been happy with every decision.
I mean, you can always go back and, you can always try to rewrite history. I took the information at the moment in time that I had and made those decisions. Sure, would I have liked it to have been easier? Of course. Would I have liked to have got to the outcome that I think was the right outcome for Nova Scotians without all of the protests? Of course. But ultimately, I had to stay focused on what I believed was the right thing for us at the end, and our ability to invest in ourselves was an important one. I came in, one of my first speeches, I had to say to the private sector, I'm not the bank. Government's not the bank. You need to go and find, if the banks aren't going to invest in you, I'm not sure why do you think it's a good idea that the province should. So we moved away from lending, like governments before us were in the business of lending. We turned that around and said we want to invest in people. That's why we had graduate opportunities, to provide an opportunity for a job. We worked with the private sector to innovate their businesses, to modernize their infrastructure. When you realize that Michelin's success in our province has been they've continued to invest in their plants. People of the province have helped them, but they've invested in their plants. It actually made them an important part, not just of their North America operation, but their global operation. Well, we have other companies here that are global companies that are part of a global chain system for those companies. They needed them to reinvest in that infrastructure. So when they're making corporate decisions, they looked at a good product here in Nova Scotia because we knew we had the right workforce. So how do we help modernize those? And we've done that through our rebate programs. We had to look to be confident enough that we can go out and export. I'm sure many of you would have thought, what's he doing in China? Why I'm sure many premiers thought, why is the Premier of Nova Scotia spending so much time in China? Well, we had record exports. All of that meant money that was going around in our rural communities. We focused on, and we put a focused approach to governing, what our role was in that. And we've had success. People can complain about how we did it, but we've had success. And I think there's the roadmap for us to continue to grow. Think about how diverse our population is today. Immigration was a priority. It will continue to be a priority. It has to be if we want to continue to grow.
We have a number of reporters on the phone. We'll go to the phone lines now. We'll start with Mike Gorman. Mike Gorman, any questions for Premier?
Yeah, Premier, I wonder, when you think back to when you were first the elected leader, it was not exactly a very friendly leadership campaign, and it strikes me that you may have been the last great victim of a political smear in this province. And I wonder to what degree that motivated the way you have approached not only being the leader of your party, but ultimately Premier.
I'm not sure. I don't know if, one of the things that I've had to, and I think all Nova Scotians need to, listen, you can't hold grudges, as much as it might feel personally satisfying at times. You're trying to you can't do that. This has never been about me. I feel very privileged to have been given the chance to govern. To be elected, period, and then to be given a chance at the party, and then to go on and have 2 terms as the Premier. I don't spend a lot of time thinking back on that stuff. I really looked at the opportunities in front of us.
Next, we'll go to Jennifer Henderson from the Halifax Examiner. Go ahead, Jennifer, if you have a question for the Premier.
I guess I'd like to know what you think what will be your most vivid memory from your time in office, say 2 or 3 years from now. What do you think will be your most vivid memory from your time in office, Premier?
Oh, the Home for Colored Children is something that I'll carry with me. It changed me in some ways. The bill the organ donation bill, it was something I believed in for a very long time. I was really proud of the way people came together on it. We literally were bearing hope. We had so many people looking for organs in our province, and the way we were doing organ donation didn't allow for the conversation to take place in a more thoughtful, caring way, and I believe the new system will, and that'll save lives. And I think 20 years from now, all of us will benefit from 4-year-olds getting a new start in life. And I'm proud just to have been in some small way part of that with this great team of people.
Next, we'll go to Zane Woodford from the Halifax Examiner. Go ahead, Zane, if you have a question for the Premier.
Not sure Zane's on the call.
Okay, nope, that's great. I'll move on. Jillian Cormier from Nova Scotia. Did you have a question?
Hi, Premier. I guess also looking back, what was the thing that you felt that you got right when everyone told you got it wrong?
Oh, I think that's a great question. Listen, I think I have the labor relations right. There's lots of people who still tell me we've got it wrong. I think we absolutely have it right. We cannot continue to outstrip the growth of our province that 30% of the population gets all the benefit from and no ability to invest in the rest of our economy. That doesn't mean that and the irony was people would believe that I've taken a whole bunch of things away from unionized employees in this province. It couldn't be further from the truth. I just slowed the growth. And I allowed us to invest in pre-primary. I allowed us to invest in other parts of our economy. I allowed us to grow exports so that you've seen that growth. It's my hope that people will all recognize everyone deserves to be part of the success of our province. And in order to do that, we all have to share in the ability to actually grow it.
Next, we'll go to Ed Halverson from QCCR Radio in Liverpool. Go ahead, Ed. All right. Bobby Knock from the Coast in Glace Bay. Any questions, Bobby? Timothy Gillespie, South Coast Today. Any questions, Timothy?
Yes, Premier. I'm getting emails and calls from readers that are concerned with the long wait times that they have to endure when they call the 811 number when they're concerned about getting a test for COVID. Is there any way that the government can do anything to reduce those wait times?
Yeah, I mean, there's been we're investing in that system right now. More people. I'm not sure. I know early on that was an issue. There's been some, depending on where you were in the province, a bit of delay length of time of getting the test. But I'll raise that issue with public health tomorrow or today later on when I talk to Dr. Strang.
Thanks, Timothy. Dan Alstrand from News 95.7, are you on? Any questions?
Tina, it's Jennifer. Can I have one follow-up?
Yeah, go ahead, Jennifer.
Okay. Premier McNeil, have I got it right in thinking that you made the decision to not stand for a third term some time ago? So even though it's a bit of a shock to us today, this is something you've been thinking about since earlier in the year. Is that what we're to understand?
That is correct. I was actually going to make this decision announcement in April, and then COVID hit, and then I reevaluated. I was actually preparing for to go again, and then this opportunity where we flattened the curve. This is a time now. Then there's enough of a window for the party to prepare a new for a leadership contest and a new leader.
Mike Gorman, did you have any other questions for the Premier?
Yeah, I did. Thanks. Premier, most of your time in office has been marked by efforts to get to a balanced budget and then maintain it and grow it. And you, as you recounted your accomplishments today, hinted on that. But I'm wondering if you have any concerns about what that legacy might actually look like when the many court cases that are happening right now eventually resolve. Do you remain as confident today in how that is going to play out as you did back when you made those decisions, or do you have some worry that the province ultimately may be looking at a very, very large retroactive bill for those decisions?
No, I don't. I don't at all share that worry. To be honest with you, I'm very confident in the decisions that we've made, and I look forward to them continuing to proceed through the system.
Go ahead, Mike, if you have another question.
Yeah, just in.
Go ahead, Mike.
Oh, okay, sorry, thanks. Premier, I'm just wondering, you mentioned you had made the decision to go before we got hit with COVID, and then obviously the last 5 months have been what they've been. Did you at any point, though, consider as you were going through the grind of the last 5 months that maybe it would be better to stick around because of that narrow time window that you referred to, and it perhaps not being big enough to give the party time to prepare?
I certainly had thought about it. There's no question. I mean, let me be clear. I'm still enjoying the job. I'm not leaving because I don't like the job. I love the job, as a matter of fact. And I've had tremendous support, both personally and professionally. Many people are surprised today that I work with, and I'm sure there's a few Nova Scotians who are surprised. Popularity has been going up. Things are going well. One of the most frequent questions I get asked by a lot of people: when are you calling the election? But it's just really time. And I think it's the right thing for the province. I think political leaders, it's never been for me about power. It really has never been. I'd like to think I'm the same guy who got elected 17 years ago, a little grayer, a little heavier, no beard. But I think to the core of who I am is the same. I think I governed to the values of my parents, that I did what I believed was right. No matter what the political costs were going to be, and there have been some. I went, and it cost us at the ballot box at times. But I was not going to leave this job having Nova Scotians say I was paralyzed by the opportunity. I wanted them to know that we were an active government, and I wasn't going to leave this job having someone say that he made a decision that was in his best interest and not our best interest. And I believe I can wholeheartedly leave here when people will be hard-pressed to say that I've made a political decision as opposed to what I believe is right for Nova Scotians. And I think the unrest and some of the decisions we made proved that. There were easier paths others have taken. Boat Harbour is a prime example. There would have been an easier path for us. It wouldn't have been the right one. I believe we took the right one, and I'm proud of it.
Jennifer, did you have any other questions?
No, just thank you for your time in office, Premier.
Thank you.
Jillian Cormier from All Nova Scotia. Any other questions?
Sorry, you said to Jennifer you weren't sure about the timeline of when these things would be happening, but do you have a timeline of when you'll be making your decision on your next move?
No, I will stay. I'm going to be governing until the party chooses a new leader, and there will be a transition to the new leader, whenever that is. But the party will determine the length of time that will take.
Have there been any discussions?
Go ahead.
Have there been any discussions with the party along those lines?
No, I actually notified the party today that this was happening. This was a very, I notified my caucus today, staff who've worked for me. Obviously, there's been a few people who have been part of this. My chief of staff actually described it, the burden of knowing as we're working our way through this is heavy. And it's why we wanted to, so only a few people knew. Obviously, I discussed it with my family, Andrea and Colleen and Jeffrey. Jeffrey had a great long weekend in PEI, so I waited for him to come home. I didn't want to ruin his weekend in PEI or have him think about it, so he came home and I saw him on Tuesday. And after I finished caucus, calling Andrew and Jeffrey or calling my siblings to let them know, and I'll talk to them later. But that's how close, and we kept it pretty tight because I wanted to be able to communicate in my own words to the people who I care about. Why we were doing this and what it was important, and I called a few people who have been long supporters of mine.
One other follow-up, it just occurred to me, did Premier Ball's move in Newfoundland have any effect on your ultimate decision, the fact that he left the way he did, and it's kind of like around the same time frame that you were talking about?
No, I mean, first of all, Dwight and I are very good friends. We will be friends outside of office. We struck a friendship. I spoke to him this morning, actually, and I would have spoken to him leading into his. I call him often, but no, it was really nothing to do with that. It really. When I look back, I came into this job, I was 38 and a half years old. I'll be 56 in November. If someone had told me I was going to get a 17-year run, I thought, wow. If someone had told me I was going to get a 17-year run plus two-term majority government, I would have said, I'm not sure I would have believed them if they told me that back then. But there's a sacrifice on everyone to do this, and I've said this at many nomination meetings across this province, and I'm sure people are ready now to be able to give you the words. There's only one name on the ballot, but there's many fingerprints on election signs, and every member of the family gets drafted. I have siblings who are teachers. You can only imagine how difficult it was during that period of time. I have siblings who are public servants. You can only imagine how difficult it has been for them. And so I'm grateful that they've continued to love me and support me. And I'm looking forward to playing a bit of golf with them and spending some time and not being blamed for everything.
We'll go back to the phone lines. I'll come right back. We'll go to Ed Halverson. I understand you're there and you have a question. Go ahead, Ed.
Yes, thank you. Premier, has anyone expressed an interest in succeeding you as leader, and what advice would you give your successor?
Hi, Ed. How you doing?
Good, Premier. Thank you.
No one has. I don't think anyone knew the job was vacant until about an hour ago, and I think they all believed that I was still going. So I wouldn't give my advice that I would give to anyone leading whatever party or wanting to be the leader of a particular province. Be true to who you are.
Go ahead, Ed. If you have another question.
No, that's it. Thank you.
Thanks. So we'll come back to the room. Go ahead.
You mentioned the difficult financial situation that you inherited as Premier. I'm wondering what you think the greatest challenge is that the next Premier is going to inherit.
Well, obviously, COVID has had a tremendous impact on our province. The difference this time around, these are not structural. COVID hasn't created a structural deficit at this point. It will require discipline on whoever governs this province to continue to manage our expenditures, but at the same time continuing to grow us economically. I would, we're very fortunate with the private sector that we have. They've done a tremendous job. We've seen it. What can happen when governments and the private sector can collaborate in a positive way. The stats leading to prove that, and I think the path out of COVID and the financial challenges of COVID will be easier because the structural deficit is not there. But it will require hard work, and it will require all of us. I'll do whatever I can to help whoever continues to lead the province to continue to manage it properly and grow it.
Across the network, are you able to make make any remarks in French about this?
I wouldn't want to do that to my French ancestors, who unfortunately I only speak broken English.
What are you going to miss?
People. I've been very fortunate around my colleagues. I said that today at the caucus table, I could tell every one of them the very first conversation I had with them. I can remember vividly my conversations with them. They've been part of my life for a long time. My staff, the extraordinary group of people who give up their lives to come to work for a political party or a premier. They give you their best advice, and ultimately, though, you make the decision and they wear it. I'm really proud of the way they've stood with me through it all, but I'll miss them. And
you got any offers from the private sector?
No, I haven't. No one knew I was leaving until today. But you know what? I'm planning on. I'll still be here for a while. You guys will still be able to ask me questions and complain about me.
Sorry, it might be a stupid question, but do we know when the next election would be? Like, is there a
It can go, there's a year and a half or so. It could go as high as 5 years if they wanted to. And the last election was in May 30th, so it could go until 2022, I think.
Any other questions?
No longer your problem.
Well, it'll always be my problem, because I am maybe not when it's called, but I will always be a passionate Nova Scotian and will do my part to support whoever gets the privilege to sit in the Premier's chair. I've had kind offers from former premiers of all political stripes when I needed advice, not only in this province but on others, and I will always support someone doing what they believe is in our collective best interest.
There hasn't been a sitting since March, and most of the committees remain shut down. I guess, can you give us a sense when you're going to recall the House, or you're going to reopen the committees?
I think the House leaders are working on that now. Thank you all very much.